Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of What If You Could. I'm your host, Brian Searcy, and I'm honored today to have with me a decorated Navy SEAL, Cody Bandars. Cody, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Cody, like I said, decorated Navy SEAL, but he's also a husband, a father, and he's dedicated to supporting a nonprofit here in the Dallas area that is actually a national nonprofit called Carry the Load. So we're going to talk about that here in the near future here, Cody, and get into that about all the great things that Carry the Load is doing. But what I would like to do is let everybody out there learn a little bit about you. So tell me a little bit about what was going on in your life about the time you were getting ready to get out of high school.
Well, I had some great friends of mine that were sons of Marines, and they were committed to joining the Marine Corps. And having been a team sports guy and really enjoyed kind of the hard work and guns and hunting and kind of
being from Nebraska,
from Nebraska, yeah, everything that the Midwest offers, kind of hard work, if you will. I really put some thought into it to go into the Marine Corps, and I kind of, the way I put it, I kind of chickened out. Was kind of talked out of it with my folks. Hey, go do the smart thing. You know, our nation's not at war. You know, we don't need folks like you in the military. You can go, use your brain, go to college, and so I did, and we graduated in 2001. So 3-4 months later, my friends were out of boot camp and out of infantry school and starting their careers in the Marine Corps with their service, and 9/11 happened. So that was kind of a defining moment in my life where I found myself in college in a fraternity, not a whole lot of meaningful things going on. Wake up on a Tuesday morning and there we were under attack. So
yeah, 9/11 happened. So you and I were fairly similar. I was sharing with you earlier before we came in. I was thinking of going to the Air Force Academy potentially, or going into the Air Force out of high school. Didn't do it. Went to the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater, graduated, got a job, and it wasn't till a few years after that I decided this isn't right for me. I felt compelled to serve my country. So I made that decision, very similar to kind of what we're going to hear about from you here in a second. But I will also say that, your piece about, you felt like you really should have done it after high school. I firmly believe that everything happens for a purpose. So you went in when you were supposed to go in. But so you graduated from college, graduated from the University of Nebraska. Mm-hmm. What happened after that?
So I took a job in Dallas as just kind of a fresh start. It actually started as kind of a mock interview. There was a company that came to town to do interviews from Dallas, and I took one just for practice. And they flew me down and ended up offering me a job, and I took it. So this was 2006, and so rough development economy following the mortgage crisis, financial meltdowns that we all remember. And so since I was in land development design, that to me that meant 3 jobs in 3 years and finally a third layoff. And so about halfway through that process, although I loved what I did, I loved engineering and math and science and geotechnics and structural design. I loved all those things, but I just constantly found myself seeking out ways to serve, and I could feel something pulling me into it. And so first thing I did was look at fire departments. How can I continue to do what I do with my college degree and continue my career, but also serve in a way that a fireman would. And there's a few departments around that had volunteer components to their fire crew that you could still work and do the same things that the normal paid fire departments did. And those didn't work out for me. I started looking at the Coast Guard. Hey, what can I do on the weekends? And they had some interesting things going on, but those weren't working out either. And I finally met some guys at church. I think we talked about Clint Bruce and D.
Right.
Elliott. And the first time I sat down with D, one of the first things he said to me, he set his coffee cup down. He said, "Cody, what's your biggest regret in life?"
And how old were you at this time?
I was probably 25.
So asking a 25-year-old what your biggest regret is, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, he talked to me in ways that nobody had before, and so did Clint when I got to know him. And so, it was easy for me. I said, D, I think about this all the time. I feel like I owe. I haven't served my country, and I owe. I didn't know anything about D at the time, but he said, hey, as a veteran that did serve, I'm 55, sitting looking at you at 25, I'd say, you got to do 2 things. One of 2 things. You either need to find an outlet for that service that suffices that need and that deals with that desire, or you need to go serve. And that was the first time I'd heard somebody since high school or maybe college say, hey, you can still do this.
Right.
Because I had friends in college doing, they would join the ROTC or they decide, hey, I can go to OCS after I graduate. But having I had a knee surgery and I was 25, and I just never thought of anyone entering the military at that time. And so I just kind of taken it off my list. So for him to say it's not too late for you to serve, that kind of struck that first chord of investigation for me and thought, and it really kind of internalized a conversation I had to have with myself before I was ready to have it out loud.
Well, and as I shared with you before we came in, that was very similar to what my path was to going into the Air Force. I got out, went to work for Johnson Wax, and did a number of other things. I was getting ready to turn 27 when I came into the Air Force, and at 27 and a half, that's the cutoff to become a rated officer. So I graduated from OTS with just enough time to squeak under that line to be able to go to NAV school, which was then in Mather, at Mather Air Force Base out in Sacramento, California. So tell me a little bit about Clint and Dee. You really just glossed over it, but you were getting some advice from two men that they didn't just serve their country. They did some great things, and then they also started a company.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Can't say enough. So Dee, I'll start with Dee. As the older, it's kind of the godfather, old blue as we'd call him. Rest his soul. We just lost him a month or so ago. Dee, deployed back to Vietnam and did some things that we didn't learn about for years until within a few months of his passing. And he was a Naval Academy graduate. Raised three boys and just left a legacy behind. But more than his service, he left behind a mark in young men's lives. And that was something he challenged everybody to do, and he lived that out. So
that's awesome.
One of those guys was Clint Bruce, former Navy SEAL who, Dee. Clint always claims that Dee was the one that orchestrated the recruiting scandal to get Clint into the Naval Academy to be on the football team, which he excelled at, and Clint, kind of paved his own way there and really excelled, and he had a unique story on his own. I kind of had a tough road getting waivers and getting the right paperwork done at my age to get into the Navy, and some things in my past, and had to clear some of that away with the authorities. Clint, was colorblind. And so he tells the story that, his coaches called him in one day and said, "Hey, I heard you want to be a SEAL." And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm colorblind. I can't." They're like, "Well, do you want to?" He's like, "Absolutely." Like, "What's your favorite color?" "Blue." "How much do you bench press?" "This much." "How much can you squat?" "This much." "All right, well, see you on Monday for your summer cruise." And so Clint, got that opportunity, was kind of blessed with that, something he didn't think he could do. And so I got to meet Clint the same way I did Dee. We were serving in a safety team together at church, and Clint just happened to bump me one day, and I knew he was a SEAL. I didn't really know what that meant. I'd seen the Charlie Sheen movie, and
right.
It was kind of like this.
Not really how it is, but
yeah, they were just SEALs to me. Were just kind of these unicorns that were superhumans that sort of actually rub up against one. And I remember he bumped me after church one day and just said, "Hey, I just think you've got just to let you know, I think you got the swagger of an E5 in the teams." And to me, that almost sounded like a dare. I was who you are one of those. Who are you to tell me that?
Right.
And I didn't know what effect that would have on me for probably a year until still kind of struggling through life and not feeling fulfilled with what I was doing, and still kind of having this regret building, and being on a team with guys like Clint and Dee and other veterans and law enforcement officers and federal agents and guys that are just veterans that had done the things that I'd talk about. I was telling everybody else's stories. I didn't have my own stories to tell. And so then it all kind of finally came to a head, and I got my third layoff in a little less than 3 years, and we had a meeting for that safety team, and we were kind of taking prayer requests, and everyone's like, "Oh, my neighbor's daughter's got this going on," or, "Hey, this guy, I know somebody who's sick." And Clint looks at everybody and he's like, "Hey, Cody," or it was either Clint or Dee, I think it might have been Dee. Cody lost his job yesterday. And I was trying to be quiet about it. It's like, "Oh, well, thanks, guy." And so then,
that should have opened your eyes that there's no secrets when you get into the military.
None. It's all fair game. And so, afterwards, we have our prayer, and I look up, and Clint's just, beady eyes, squinting, looking at me. He's got this big beard, and he's just a mountain of a man. And everyone's, waiting for him to talk, and he looks at me, and he says, I know who's hiring. I know who's always hiring. I said, all right, Clint, who's that? Naval Special Warfare.
There you go.
And so we walked out there. I'm like, man, I've had this knee surgery and I'm old. And he said, hey, man, there's always a waiver for things like that. And so that was kind of those first steps. And I just felt like it wasn't the time to go back to the rat race and get back in engineering. I was trying.
Right.
Believe me, I was trying.
Somebody was trying to tell you there was another path for you.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was kind of the first time that I didn't have a job when I could not get a job.
Right.
And so that really opened my eyes to kind of think, I felt something bigger, something international, something coming. And so through the conversations and kind of the Lord's leading, if you will, that turned out to be the Navy.
Well, no, that is awesome. I met Clint. My first time I met him was through Chad Hennings. Chad Hennings has Wingman, and I was a member of Wingman. And for a year, we did Wingman Varsity, where we went and talked to a bunch of high school kids in the stands at different football stadiums around North Texas. And Clint was one of the speakers. So
Got it.
That was my first opportunity to meet him. Now, you were working for Clint a little bit at Trident before you went into the Navy, and that's also where you were introduced to Carry the Load. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like I alluded to earlier, I had some paperwork to get done before I could fulfill my duties that I wanted to with my country. And so during that time, Clint and Dee kind of extended a hand and said, hey, you could add value here and be mentored and be around people that have done things that you want to do, so come work for us. And so, back in those days, they'd been around for a few years, and it was, hey, hopefully the paychecks get cashed. And, we were in some small offices and, borrowing furniture, and whoever had leftovers was giving it, it was meek days, but it was kind of the building blocks of what is, Trident Response Group today. So I was technically, I guess I was in business development for training.
Okay.
I ran an operational fitness program that helped folks like myself train for the Navy, but also just, we had anywhere from 50 to 60-year-old guys showing up to hang out with us and work out in ways that they hadn't before, and that was neat. And Clint was kind of the leader that spearheaded that. But so in working with Clint and Dee, lots of interaction and FaceTime with veterans, and it was really kind of the first time I got to be involved in that, especially in a work time setting. And so immediately it was just kind of buffing off these rough edges, and Clint called me into his office and said, hey, man, the guys in the other room want to take you outside and beat the crap out of you. I'm like, Clint, I don't know why. He's like, well, I do. Let me tell you. He's like, you got to take the you out of you, and we got to do it for you. We're going to help. And so that's really how it was. There was, talking about Carry the Load, so Memorial Day, working at a place like that, with guys like Clint and Dee and the other veterans that were there who'd lost so many folks, it was unique, because I'd never worked at a place like that and been around folks like that, and as intense as their passion was for their country. And so kind of embraced that, and we came back after Memorial Day, and Tuesday morning, and Clint comes in just on fire. Hey, everybody back in the doghouse, everybody, get here, come here, we got to talk about this. And if you've ever seen his story about Carry the Load, I'm sure it's still on the website, just about how he was, feeling that weight that he was carrying for brothers that he'd lost, and he's, out on White Rock, and he's humping around the lake with a pack on, and an older veteran stops and says, "Hey, son, who are you carrying?" Well, he told us that story the next day. Said, "Hey, here's what's happening. Here's what did happen. We got to do something about this. We got to bring back the meaning of Memorial Day." And he had huge vision. He said, I'm going to get Oakley, I'm going to get Bell Helicopter, I'm going to get a Pepsi and Frito-Lay, I'm going to get all these companies, and we're going to do something about it. And we're going to let everybody know in America what Memorial Day really means. And we're going to bring attention to it. We're going to support people. And so at that time, there wasn't like, hey, we're going to go find nonprofit partners, we're going to raise money, we're going to make a pledge, we're going to bring a relay in from none of that was there. Right. It was just we're going to do something about it. And so that was 2009. So as it all went down, the company was still growing, and Clint was still putting that idea together. And really, Clint likes to do things extreme and with excellence. And that's so, perfect. I think he didn't want to launch that too early, but he was getting the right people on the boat and establishing a board and really bringing that together. So I left in early 2010 for the Navy. Was replaced by a phenomenal SEAL, Ryan Parrott, who many folks in this town know, who started Sons of the Flag and Bird's Eye View, and supports Carry the Load as well. Yeah, so Ryan, I left to go in the Navy. Ryan got out of the West Coast teams, came in, took my spot, and then blew it out of the water. Really made Trident what it was on the training and operations side for things I couldn't do. I didn't have the credibility nor the knowledge or the know-how. So Ryan does that, and the first carry the load happens in 2011. And so I'm in SEAL training and hearing about it from all my friends. Hey, remember Clint? Remember this? Remember that? And I'm like, man, this is it. It's really
awesome.
It's finally coming. So I was kind of on the sidelines, telling people about it and promoting it just by sending people down there. And so I got to be a part of it from afar. And eventually, the story, Fox News picks it up, and major sponsors and major awareness, East Coast Relay, West Coast Relay, and it just became something truly great.
Well, and now you've come full circle. You're here talking about Carry the Load. You're an ambassador for Carry the Load. So let's talk a little bit more about it. So there's 3 pillars or 3 areas that they focus on. The first one is awareness. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the awareness piece. And that goes back to the what if you could, really, that Clint started Carry the Load, right? That's bring memorial back and bring patriotism back, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that Clint said was, hey, memorial can't be about swimming pools and barbecues and, your last opportunity to buy a car at this interest rate and come by and get an appliance. Like, for him, it was literally about the sacrifices of those that had already made and to carry those legacies on and to really care for those families. And if you look back at some of the days with Clint on that trail, I mean, he's got the daughters of his friends on his shoulders walking him down the highway, and that's just touching. So, yeah, I'd say the awareness piece, awareness for Memorial Day and what it truly means, for Americans to know who's serving their country, how are they serving, and what's that really mean, for the families that, may lose their loved one doing it or that sacrifice, daily. Also, the awareness of the other nonprofit partners that Carry the Load funds and participates with and their missions.
Now, that is awesome. So then the second of the 3 pillars is the continuum of care. Tell me a little bit about that.
So Carry the Load is constantly made aware of situations that need funding, and most of those come through nonprofit partners. So if you look on our website, you'll see them, and I've been involved with a few of them. Heroes on the Water was one that D. Elliott was part of, and so I naturally served them whenever I could. Sons of the Flag, one I've always been a part of with Ryan after meeting him. The Wind River Ranch up in Colorado, it's so to back up there. So Heroes on the Water takes vets with traumatic experiences, be that a brain injury or depression or PTSD or maybe they lost a leg. Canoeing, kayaking, fishing, getting with other veterans to help them heal, and it's just been medicinal and therapeutic chapters all over the country. Sons of the Flag, the resource for burn survivors. So Ryan's vision with that was, hey, he met somebody who was severely burned, said, hey, what's next? And the guy said, you're looking at it. This is me.
Right.
And he said, I'm going to do something about that. And that's what Ryan's really done that and done it extremely well. And then Wind River Ranch, we were introduced to that through one of the board members there, where it's a horse ranch up in near Estes Park in the Valley of Longs Peak, where veterans get invited to just come and relax. And you get there and everything's taken care of. You're not cooking your food. You don't have to care for your young kids if you don't want to. There's horses and fishing and kayaking and canoeing and it's just a time to relax and just kind of be loved on and be served. And my family and I got to do it last year, and it was amazing. So there's 3 examples right there, and to get outside the military part of that, there's also partners for law enforcement and first responders.
And make sure we talked about that.
Absolutely, and it's all relevant. This fabric of America and the freedom we enjoy is absolutely, it's taken care of domestically.
More so than ever, I would even say that the emergency responders need our help and our care and our prayers. As veterans, we have a lot of organizations that reach out to veterans, but law enforcement, especially if they get injured or burned, that's why Sons of the Flag and those organizations are so important, because they don't have the same network to potentially help them as veterans do. So we've got to bring that whole community together.
There's a lot of awareness to be made there, and everything that we've always classified. We always study the military PTSD and traumatic brain injury and the like, and you see the same things. And sometimes to more extent on our local service members.
Absolutely, and they don't get the help.
They don't, and they're doing it in their backyard.
Exactly.
We'd go do what we did on deployments, and we'd train, and we'd eventually make it home, and we'd decompress if we did, or we'd compartmentalize and hang out in the team room, whatever we did. Cops and they're beating the street and going home to their family that day.
Absolutely.
And they're living in that and working in that every single day. And that the one I know so many of them, so many firemen in Dallas that I hang with, and those they put up, they really do, and they do it for us selflessly.
The last pillar is education. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, Carry the Load's, Clint, one of his original missions was, hey, let's bring back the meaning of Memorial Day. And one of the shirts one year I remember was "Don't Tread on May." And it was, it was kind of around that whole like Tea Party movement back. It was around that time when it was like, hey, don't tread on me. Federal government, you can't take over. So this "Don't Tread on May" was like, hey, we're not gonna be relegated to the Memorial Day month being that of sales and appliances. We're not gonna do that. So education, like one of the big pushes is to get this information into the schools. When our kids are young, and educate them on the flag and the history, what it truly means. And teach them the etiquette. Educate them on heroes that have gone before and what that sacrifice is like, and then challenge them. And Carry the Flag does that. And then kind of the new campaign, Be the Flag, is let's teach the kids, why is it that's that flag out in front of your school? Why would somebody leave everything they know to go join our military and fight for that in foreign land? Like, why would someone do that? And that's kind of the educational piece there, is because we've got a whole crop of youngsters growing up that have got more things in their face through media, social media, and things we can't control, and we can't necessarily control how that goes, nor do we want to control it. But if we can put something in front of them that says, hey, this is worth you seeing, we'll change lives there.
Well, that's very exciting. So Main Street Pilot, and all about What If You Could, we have programs to allow the learning of decision-making and personal skills, which are lost on a lot of those young today. They don't have a single foundational tool to make decisions, and because of the phones and all those types of things, it becomes a problem. So I'm kind of excited about potentially partnering with y'all, because what we do is we don't use traditional training where you go in and just do something for an hour. They get something every single week, 2 or 3 times a week, so that it's that continuation training. It's having it in front of you all the time, and tying the narrative that's important to Carry the Load, and the importance of veterans and what we fought for and what our flag means. That can all be part of that. So I'm really kind of excited about that. So you guys have a couple things coming up. I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. September 10th, Golf for Heroes. Anything you want to add for that one?
All the events that Carry the Load does, they do with excellence, and there's no organization too big or too small to think about there. So anybody that can and would join, we'd ask them to.
Okay. September the 11th, and the next day, there's a volunteer opportunity at the DFW Cemetery. Then September 29th is a casino night, and then October 5th is sporting clay. So I know I'm going to be doing at least 2 of those.
Great.
I was telling you ahead of time I'm gonna sign up for the golf tournament, and then get my shotgun out of the closet and take advantage of that. So
great.
Just to close here, Cody, first off, thank you very much for being on the show. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm really excited about what Carry the Load is doing. Tell me, how can people help? How can people support Carry the Load?
Well, Colonel, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be able to represent Carry the Load here today. And Colonel, thank you for your service. I really enjoyed getting to hear your story before we came on. So, Carry the Load, that we've got a relay that comes in all month from the East Coast and one from the West Coast now. It's gone for 2 years, and so a big push this year is to bring one in from the Midwest as well. So anyone that can hear this, and anyone that knows folks along those routes, the more events that we can get in small towns to raise more awareness and bring more dollars to the fold, the better. So that's obvious. Starting a team or starting an event is huge, and we can always use more of those. There's one up in Montana last week. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I had talked to Debbie, and she was potentially going to be on the show, and she goes, "Well, I'm going to Montana." I said, "Well, it's going to be a lot cooler there than it is here in Dallas." So.
Definitely. So it doesn't. You don't need a big corporate arm and a big event venue to do something for Carry the Load. You just raise your hand, and we'll help, and the support will be there.
Okay. And carrytheload.org, correct?
Yes.
That's where everybody goes?
Yeah.
Okay. Cody?
All the events are on there on the events page. And
perfect.
Yeah, it's all there.
Thank you very much for being on the show. It was awesome. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in today. As always, what if you could? That's what you've got to think about every time you make a decision, every time you think about how to make our country better, how to keep our republic the strongest republic and the strongest country in the world, and to lead the way for the world. So, again, thank you for tuning in to What If You Could, and I'll see you next week.